Hey everybody, my name is Bryan. I'm a VFX artist here in Hollywood, and in this tutorial we're going to cover the curves tool and how I use it to push my color grades and my compositions over the edge. Get a lot of questions asking what is the curves tool, or what does the curves tool even do? And the curves tool you'll find in pretty much every major software out there, from color grading to VFX to Photoshop even. And a lot of people don't have a good understanding of what it does and how powerful of a tool it can be in your repertoire when you're trying to make something or make something look good. Now, disclaimer, we're going to cover the curves tool in DaVinci, but it's pretty much the same concepts across the board. Another thing also to know about the curves tool is it should never be your only tool. You should use it in conjunction with something else or with your entire lineup of fixes, changes, and alterations you're going to do to your material, your footage, so on and so forth. So without further ado, let's jump on in and let's see what we can do with the curves tool on some of the footage that I've picked here in DaVinci. I have this shot that I got from a production I was a part of not too long ago. It's just a simple guitar shot. It's a short clip. It actually jumps out of focus here at the end. I like it because it's super cinematic, and so we'll use it here. You'll notice it's pretty flat right now, and that's because we shot on the Blackmagic Pocket 6K. I shot in RAW, and so I'm able to switch from whatever color space we used on set and tweak it to film. So we're in a film color space, which has a lot of dynamic range. Dynamic range, you can see it because let's see here, you could see that the values in the back are not necessarily to 0, but they're there and they're pretty low. Whereas I come over here, you can see that the values in the lights are pretty high, but I don't have any zeros or maxed out, which is 255 in this case. I don't think I ever get anything. I think there is one moment right here. Yeah, I get some 255 values right there. But that's okay. That's where we want. We want to draw attention to that, so it works out. But let's open up a node here, and let's open up the curves tool, and let's break this down and figure out what's actually happening. For the purpose of this tutorial, I'm only going to use curves to grade. We're going to go from this right here to at least a decent shot. It won't be perfect because I'm only using curves, but let's break this down. You'll notice I use scopes a lot here, so if you guys are unfamiliar with scopes, I highly suggest maybe learning how scopes work. I may do a tutorial on scopes in the future. But this is how I'm going to color grade. It's how I always color grade. But here's our curves tool. Right off the bat, if this is the first time you've seen this, you'll notice that it looks like something straight out of algebra. And honestly, it is. This is a linear curve. Basically, it's a 0 to 1 curve. Now, in this case, it's actually 0 to 255. But for the purposes of this tutorial, we're going to talk about it in 0 to 1. It's easier to understand rather than throwing all of these numbers at you guys. But the concept of math applies here. So our point of origin here is 0 to 0. On the x-axis we have 1, and on the y-axis we have 1 as well. Okay. Now I get a lot of misconceptions out there, and this is actually what sparked this tutorial. I actually heard somebody say this to me, and they said, "Oh, yeah, the curves tool. This is your background, and this is your foreground." And technically true on a shot like this, it's not what's happening. Okay. What's actually going on here is this is your black levels and these are your white levels, which means this is the blackest blacks of your shot and this is the whitest whites of your shot. Think of it as values, a luminosity value 0 to 1. Because this is 1 in the Y and 1 in the X here, this means this is 1 to 1 or 1 comma 1. That is the highest value of brightness of white you're going to get in your shot. Okay. Case in point, to see how that works, if I lower this all the way down, it's taking my super white values now, and you can see it's crunched them down. Okay. Now, another thing to understand is if this is 0 and this is 1, that means this is 0.5, which is your midtones. So if I pull this up, you'll notice everything gets yanked up except for the blacks and the whites. They stay where we want them. Okay. The blacks pretty much, well, I have to find the blackest black, but you'll see that they don't go up as fast as, something else. Those are your midtones. And why curves are such a powerful tool is because you have levels out there. We have our log wheels too, which I highly suggest you learn if you don't know in DaVinci. But in Uke you have other ways. You have brightness, contrast. But the reason why curves are such a powerful tool is because with the curves tool, you have your blacks split up into blacks, midtones, and whites of their own. Midtones split up in the same way, and whites split up in the same way. And then you continue to zero those down as well. So the farther down you get, it's like a gradient. It's darker. The farther up you get, it's brighter. And because it works like that, we can make fine tweaks at different levels, at different values. For instance, if I wanted to tweak my whites, okay, but I wanted only the whites to be tweaked. So these super whites right here, maybe I wanted to bring them back into safe. And there you go. They're coming down. They're no longer 255. Well, they're going to stay 255 for the most part until I grab all of them. You can notice what's going on in the scopes as well. There you go, 252. Okay, so with that knowledge, now you can take your compositions and your plates and push them over to the next degree in combination with what you're doing. But like I said, for this tutorial, we are just going to do the curves, and I'll show you the power of curves essentially. So let's get started. I don't like always working on my first node, so I'm going to work on the second node, disable that first one. Okay, it's just a etiquette thing that I like to go with. And right off the bat, we know that this is a flat plate, so we need to add contrast. So let's do that now. So knowing what I told you earlier, where in the blacks down here, you have midtones of blacks. It's a gradient. We don't want to work with this just yet. But we also don't want to work with the whites just yet. We want to add some contrast and keeping our whites where they are and our blacks where they are. So let's pull down some of our darker midtones or our brighter blacks, essentially, from like right here. Not too far. Another caveat, less is better when you're dealing with curves. So we brought our blacks down. They're not 100%. You don't want to go to 100% black, so we still have values, RGB values there. This is working out. But now what I want to do is I actually want to lift this plate up because it looks pretty dark. And you could tell because here, all our values here in our parade and our waveform are resting below the midtones. And for some shots that works, like if you're going for that look, that's okay. But in this case, I don't actually want to rest in the midtones. So let's pull this up for now. So these are just under our brightest whites, and you can see what happened there. Watch the parade as I do this again. And it's stretching our values up, but we still have a bunch of values here. Knowing that these values are going to rest in this region here, we know that I can lift up here and I'll pull the whole thing up, right? So let's do that. And there they go. Nice and soft. Cool. And so you can see the difference here. There you go. That's before. Now it's after. Now we have some contrast. When you see a curve layout like this, it usually means one or two things. It means you are going from, you have a under contrasted image, like a super under contrast going to a more flat, or you have a flat image going to contrast. This, usually an S like this, is indicative of higher contrast being added to your plate. Okay, it's a good starting point. The next, we'll add another node so we can do more changes here. We can always go back and do more changes on this one, but now since we started on a new node, we can start from a baseline of what this plate looks like and gives us more power, more control. So let's label this. I'm gonna hit tab. I've set a keyboard shortcut in DaVinci to tab to label, and we're gonna call this base contrast. Now, for this one, let's start looking about colors. Okay, so I like where our blacks are. Our whites are, I like where our whites are. With this is the brightest part, which will give this the ability to rest in our plate essentially without being distracting. But one thing we need to do is we need to separate blacks from blacks. We want this to be a different black than this. To our eyes, doesn't really look like that. We need a little bit more contrast. Another thing we also have to fix, as you see here, there's just blue light that comes down. Now I like the blue light, but I want to use it to my advantage. And another thing too, I want this to be a little warmer in the end. Okay, notice I haven't even talked about white balance yet, but you can even use curves to white balance. And we'll do that right now, actually. Just get that knocked out of the way. So let's white balance this. So if you look over here in DaVinci, you'll notice that all of these have been attached together. So whenever we move this, they all will change. But now I want to start to white balance by looking at our scope. I think we're too heavy on the cool side, the blue side. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go with the red first. And this is in the midtones area. I want to lift the reds up. See that? It's getting a little, not too much. Right there, pull that back. And the greens, I'm going to do the same. Just slightly. Now on the blues, I don't like where this is, so I know this is around here. I know what this is too, but I know this is around here, so I want to pull this down. We have a little bit warmer plate now. Okay, let's see the difference. And notice, because I didn't move any of the blues, reds, or greens in the whites, or the blues, reds, and greens in the blacks, they pretty much stay the same. They might tweak a little bit, but if you come over here, there you go, they stay the same. Okay, and that's, I said, another point of the power of curves, because if let's say I want values to stay where they are. Let's say right at the 512, which is about middle. I really want the blues to stay there. All I have to do is create a point right here, and maybe I'll put a point right here so you guys can see it. And if I pull down, it's only pulling the blues, and you can see right here, only pulling the blues in that area. Okay. Okay, so I like this. It's a little bit warmer. We may come back and tweak this a little bit. I think it might be a little bit too yellow for my taste, but it's definitely warmer. It's that way when the blue light comes in, you really start to see it, but it loses its luster and its punch. It doesn't overtake the plate. Okay, so we're gonna call this style balance. Okay, it's not a real white balance. I actually went away from the white balance, but let's open up a new node. And for this one, let's start to make some tweaks. To see, we want to pull this white out right here. We want to lock down these whites here. So I can tell you right now, if you watch this, it's about right here, and I can tell because it's red. So what I want to do is I want to add blue in this area. So let's do what I told you about earlier. Let's bracket it, and we'll figure out where we need to in a method called sweeping here in a second. I'll show you what that is. And you can see I'm starting to add blue in certain ranges here. There it is. Now, I'm doing this on extremes. I want to see where it is. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to sweep. What sweeping is, there we go, perfect, is I'm just going back and forth and trying to find those values, and then I will relax. So right there, we have a little bit too much. Pull that back. Cool. So now I have set my parameters. And now we can make our tweak. So I just want to add a little bit of blue. Watching my scopes here, I'm trying to line up the blue with the green. And knowing where this is, we're going to do the same thing with the red now. So I'm going to create a point here. Pull that down. Right here. And now what I want to do is the red. And we're going to do something with the green. Now, what I could have done is just lock them together and done everything at the same time. But I'm doing this, so you guys understand how I'm making these tweaks. Cool. That's 2 green. Okay, closer to white there. And you can just come over your hover. Now I need more blue in here. Definitely need more blue, so let's go back to blue. And there we go. Pretty close. A little bit too much red in it. We could pull red out. Cool. I like what I see there. Now I'm going to only work in my luminosity, so watch this. I'm going to do the same thing here now without actually working on the colors. Now, because I have my colors here, this will grab all 3, pull them up. Now you'll notice as soon as I do that, we get this weird coloration here. So remember, less is better. So I'm just going to lift that up just a little bit. Let's label this. We're going to call this pick guard ISO. Now you're in DaVinci, you can just use a qualifier to grab this, but now you guys are seeing like, hey, I'm grabbing values that I can use. Okay, let's look at that difference there. Okay, and another thing that you're also noticing, because I'm dealing in those specific values, it's adding a level of contrast to that because I'm focusing on this. See that? It's adding that level of contrast. And honestly, the blacks aren't even changing, but they look like they're changing because I'm adding more values around them. So, all right, let's move on. So we have the pick guard ISO here. I have this nice highlight here. Now, one thing is I think this highlight is looking a little too hard on the edges. And this is where a qualifier would come in to pull a key and soften that matte up. What you can do here is just Just relax those curves just a little bit. Cool. All right, we have this shimmer of a glow here now. And the problem is because those midtones are here. So what I can do is pull the blues back. I'm just going to pull everything back. In fact, let's chain everything together real quick. Cool. There you go. Now what that did is that popped them all back into place. So now I have to come back in here and re-white balance. So now we come to blue. Just it's adding too much blue in an area I don't want it to. And that's one of the weak points of curves, and that's why this is exactly why I say don't use curves only. Okay. As you see, we lost all that coloration that we had fixed. That's all right. It's only a tutorial. I'm only trying to show you guys things that you could do. Trying to make sure this test to see how it looks now. It still has this weird glow here, but I can live with that for now. All right, so that's okay for now. If we want to, we can always come back. Cool. So I'm going to add another node. And for this one, we're going to break this down. I want to bring us into safes. Actually, we are safe. The only thing that's wrong is you can see that we're clipping right here. That's this. So let's pull those values down right now. There you go, right about there. And we look safe on the blacks, but I actually kind of want to add a little bit more. Cool. And now we darken the entire plate. So what I want to do is lift up my midtones like so. Okay. It's another contrast curve. It's not as powerful as the S curve per se, but basically we're crunching the whites, crunching blacks, lifting up the midtones, creating this bell shape essentially. It is another contrast curve. This is also indicative of more contrast being added. But let's see here. But in this case, we're lifting up what we want. I'm not actually no longer a fan of this change. I do like the addition that it did, but in the future, I'm going to do that with a qualifier. I'll pull a key on his skin tones. Now, one thing is I know Paul very personally. He is not this pale. So we need to add some more red. Now, we know this is in the midtones, right? So let's come to our red channel. And I'm going to do what I did earlier. And I'm just going to sweep until I find what I'm looking for. That's too much. Just enough. Okay, cool. Let's pull this back, pull this back. And then I just literally want to add just reds there in that area. Okay. Just a little bit of red. Might be too much red. There we go. There you go. He has a little bit more red there. We could probably add maybe a little bit of blue. Let's see. And I'm really making small changes here now. Super small changes. Okay, I don't like how dark this pick guard is, but in the future, what I would actually do, is this. I would pull a key from his pick guard right there. And lower luminosity just a little bit. Cool. All right, go back here. I would then create this. This is going off topic now in the tutorial, but I'm still going to use this for the curves. So I'm just going to do this really quick if you bear with me. Okay. Let's track this into place. I should probably have rotated that, but that's okay. Let's see if this actually holds. a lot of things going across it. Looks pretty good, actually. And then we fly off. Perfect. Awesome. So we have this now. Okay. What I actually want to do is go Alt L. Let's pull that over. I need to get rid of this. Let's put that in. So I'm building a layered node system here. I don't want that there. I want this here. Perfect. This is what we want. I'm going to disable this one. Now what I can do, using the curves tool, come into our we know where the midtones are now because this is where the brackets have been built. I'm just going to lift up here. Okay, make sure. Oh, I just realized I did something here. Perfect. Just gonna lift up on the pick guard just a little bit. Turn this on, and then I'm gonna come over here to the key output. I'm gonna lower that just a little bit, not by much. I just don't. What I don't want to do is make this brighter than this on accident. So I just want to lower this. Make sure I keep an area of a safety net essentially. And here you go. Got my whites there. Makes that stand out. Skin tones are okay. They're not perfect. I would do a key here and do that, but yeah, and keep in mind, we did all this without log wheels. I didn't touch it once. Now, log wheels are the more powerful thing here in DaVinci. But like I said, I want you guys to be able to do this in, like, say, After Effects. And before you ask, yes, you can pull this key in After Effects. There's an absolute way to do it. You can do it in Nuke as well. You can even do it in Premiere. And that's a tutorial for another day. But let's play this through. And, looks pretty good. A nice separation here. I didn't even have to try to build it. That's his strap that comes in. And his arm. And it looks great. So yeah, tell me what you think in the comments, guys. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you guys learned something about curves and how maybe you can use curves in your workflow to just make your, compositions pop just that much further. Definitely like, share, and subscribe, guys. I can't wait to do another video for you, and I'll see you soon.